Hi, everybody. I hope that all of you are doing well. And I just want to start out by saying that I miss all of you and our class meetings. I am realizing how much I valued our class discussions. And so I just hope that all of you are able to find some social interaction during this time and are healthy and well. I wish that I had a pretty background behind me, but I am sort of shoved away in the corner of my kitchen while my husband is working in the office because we are both working from home full time right now. So, with that, I will get started. I have started to realize that within my research interests around preschool suspension and expulsion and punitive disciplinary practices relating to social and emotional development for young children, I really haven't been looking at the impact of social and emotional development or challenging behaviors on families of young children. And so I've titled this presentation Preschool Suspension and Expulsion Impacts on Families, but I'm not sure that that's really a great title because I'm not really sure where this line of inquiry is going to lead me in the long run. Right now, I think I'm really looking at how families are experiencing barriers in responding to their children who are demonstrating challenging behaviors and trying to find a sort of connection between the ways that teachers are trained and are dealing with challenging behaviors to families' experiences. And so that's sort of where I'm at right now in this exploration of exploring families and challenging behaviors. Because traditionally I've been looking at it from sort of a teacher and school perspective. So I am excited about the readings that I've included for you, and I'm excited to learn more about how this line of inquiry can tie into family research. And so I just want to start off with a little bit of a data dump because there's a lot of data out there on preschool suspension and expulsion and the number of children who are suspended and expelled from early childhood settings. So just as a brief recap, as many as 8,710 3 and 4-year-old children are expelled each year. And that number is from the joint statement that I've included as a required reading for this week. I would probably guess that that number has been updated in recent years. There's new data coming out about that all the time, but that's where that number is coming from. And this is 3 times the rate of children that are suspended or expelled from K-12 settings. And in child care centers especially, which are not state-funded preschool centers, up to 39% of child care providers have reported expelling a child or removing a child from their classroom in the past year. And these suspensions and expulsions have disproportionate impacts on different populations of young children, including African American children, specifically African American boys, and children with disabilities. And so I'm not really going to focus a lot on getting really deep into the data because that's not the purpose of this presentation, but I would encourage each of you, if you're interested in this topic, to take a deep dive into the data. And it is disheartening to me to see so many young children being removed from early childhood classrooms this young. So, what are the reasons for these suspensions and expulsions in early childhood settings? Before we get too deep into talking about families, I just wanted us to think about how we would typically define challenging behavior, because challenging behavior might be different to me or different to you. What I would consider a tantruming behavior might look different than what you would consider a tantruming behavior. And I also think it's important to think about the types of words that we're using to describe challenging behaviors. Are we using words like aggressive or problem children? I hear that one a lot when we think about children who exhibit challenging behaviors. And then I'd like to provide a definition of challenging behavior. And so challenging behavior can be defined as any repeated pattern of behavior that interferes with or is at risk of interfering with child's optimal learning or engagement in pro-social interactions with peers and adults. And this is from a Smith and Fox article. This is a pretty widely used definition of challenging behavior in early childhood special education literature. And I think for me, the important part is remembering that these are behaviors that are not just potentially quote unquote annoying or potentially not compliant behaviors in a classroom setting, but these are behaviors that are actually interfering with learning and development. Research literature also tells us that relationships matter. So when I was thinking about connecting my research interests to families, I realized that a lot of the research that I'm reading cites family relationships as an important part of promoting social and emotional development for young children. And it's pretty widely accepted that these relationships between families and professionals lead to better understanding of behavior and better outcomes for children. But yet, what are we seeing happening? Are we really encouraging the type of communication between professionals and families that results in support for young children with challenging behavior? And I would say no, because the data that we're seeing that says that we are not responding to challenging behavior appropriately, but instead suspending young children and asking for them to be removed from our classroom does not tell me that we're doing a great job of this right now. So I really wanted to start exploring sort of these two questions, which is, how do responses to challenging behaviors in school impact families? So connection between school and family. And what are the experiences of families when young children are suspended and expelled? Are there impacts to family life when children are experiencing these behavior issues in school and teachers are removing them from the classroom? And so 2 of the optional readings for this week were both from a qualitative study done by Dubé and Ostrowski, where they interviewed 7 families of children with challenging behaviors. And the first article really looked at the impact of challenging behavior in general on families, because this is something I hadn't really looked at before. And so from their study, they found that parenting a child with challenging behavior impacts how the family chooses activities. Parents talked about decisions to stay home or not go to some activities because they were concerned that their child was going to act in a way that would cause barriers. They also talked about issues with siblings, how the child's challenging behavior impacted siblings, whether it was at home or whether it was out in the community. They also cited increased stress levels. So parents who are parenting children with challenging behaviors are experiencing increasing stress, and they're also questioning their parenting competency. And when the same researchers asked the same families to describe their experiences seeking assistance for children with challenging behaviors, there were 4 main themes that the families talked about, and those were their first concerns, which included the realization that these challenging behaviors, such as hitting, kicking, screaming, that those were not going away with age, and that there might be something that wasn't typical happening with this behavior. They mentioned the steps that they took to access support, which in most cases was seeking support from a childcare provider or a teacher as the first person that they went to, because this was a trusted person that they expected to be knowledgeable about supports. They all faced challenges when seeking assistance, or most of them did, and this included things like teachers or childcare providers not being able to adequately provide resources. And they also talked about helpful supports, such as medical providers who provided assistance with the service process. And so these were sort of the themes that families were going through as they sought assistance. The most interesting article to me, and the one that I would like to sort of focus on for a minute, is the other required reading from Zuloff and Zinser, which was just published in 2019. And this was looking at teachers' perceptions of parents and their center support, and how this influenced whether or not they asked for a child to be removed from their classroom. This research, I think, relates more to connecting school and families in the way that I am hoping to move forward towards dissertation research. So this was really interesting to me that teachers who requested children to be removed from their classrooms talked about parents in a way that they had more negative perceptions of parents than teachers who did not request removals. And they cited things like feeling that it would be more difficult to have consistency in these parents' homes, or that they had less faith or belief that parents would follow through with practices at home. And these are things that teachers who didn't request a child to be removed from their classroom weren't really talking about during interviews. The researchers found that communication styles play an important role, and that teachers who requested children to be removed were less likely to mention positive communication styles and frequent communication with parents prior to asking for a removal or having difficulty with a child in their classroom. They also found that perceived center support to talk to parents about their children or to prevent and respond to challenging behavior increased teacher-parent interaction, that teachers that felt more supported in their center were more likely to be fostering positive relationships with parents in relation to social emotional development of their children. And there was an unexpected finding from this study that teachers who had asked for a removal of a child from their classroom actually talked about parent characteristics such as their marital status, mental illness, family stressors such as incarceration. They were attributing these to the children's behavior problems. And the overall generalization was that these teachers were more likely to believe that their parents' behaviors and characteristics were influencing the children's challenging behaviors. And so to keep this short, I have a few questions for discussion here. In relation to the articles, I just want to talk about what comes to mind when you think about challenging behavior. And are definitions of challenging behavior different based on the environment or the individual child? If you're a parent, how have you communicated with teachers about social and emotional development? And what supports or training might teachers need in order to challenge perceptions of parents of children with challenging behavior, specifically in relation to the third article about teacher perceptions? I hope that you all enjoy the readings, and I look forward to a great discussion this week.